My sister stole my private photos from my hard drive and showed them to her friends as a joke. They called me desperate and pathetic. I pretended not to care. But I also knew exactly who else had access to that drive, and they didn't take it lightly. After my divorce, I moved back to Kent, Ohio. It wasn't glamorous, but it was familiar. The marriage had ended suddenly. Alan, my ex-husband, had been cheating with a coworker from his tech firm in Denver, where we lived for the last 5 years. We had no kids, just a townhouse, a joint checking account, and 10 years of memories that suddenly meant nothing. After I left Denver, I went straight to my hometown with what I could fit in my car, a few bags of clothes, my old desktop, and an external hard drive I called the vault. That drive held everything: my documents, journals, personal videos, scanned letters from my childhood, digital copies of art projects, and yes, some photos I'd taken after my separation. Some were raw and emotional, some artistic nudes. I never intended for anyone to see them. They weren't for validation. They were part of a quiet, private healing process. A way to remind myself that my body was still mine. When I moved back, my sister offered her a spare room. She had a decent-sized 2-bedroom house off Crane Avenue. She'd always been more social and image-conscious than me, Instagram perfect, attention-seeking, always with a curated feed and perfect angles. I was more of an introvert. A digital archivist by trade, I spent most of my days scanning, tagging, and categorizing old photographs and historical documents for the local university. Our personalities didn't naturally mix well, but I was in survival mode, and she was my only immediate option. At first, she was welcoming. We watched old movies, drank tea in the evenings, and cooked together. But I could feel the friction bubbling underneath. She would casually mention how frumpy my clothes were, or laugh when I didn't recognize a TikTok trend. She'd comment on my job like it was some glorified librarian gig. I let it go. I was living in her house after all, even if I was paying part of the rent. I set up my desktop in the shared office between our bedrooms. I plugged in my external hard drive, my vault, where I kept all my personal files. I had encryption software on a few folders, including the private ones, but I hadn't updated it in a while. I didn't think anyone would go snooping. I didn't think my sister, of all people, would dig through my personal things. I was wrong. One Friday night, Maura had a few of her friends over. I mostly stayed in my room, trying to keep out of their way. I remember getting up around 10 p.m. to make tea and hearing laughter coming from the living room. The kind of laughter that makes your stomach twist, not joyful, but sharp and gossipy. I walked through quietly, trying to avoid making eye contact. But I heard my name. Honestly, she must have been crying when she took those, one of her friends said, laughing. She was probably hoping someone would say she still looks good post-divorce, another chimed in. She titled one of the folders Fall, Healing, like it's some moody poetry blog from 2008, Maura added, practically giggling into her wine glass. They were laughing at me. I felt heat rise up my neck, and my ears started ringing. I kept walking, made my tea, and went back to my room without saying anything. I barely slept that night. Instead, I got up, plugged in the hard drive, and checked the access logs. 3 folders had been opened recently, 2 of which had timestamps from that same day. One was the folder with my divorce journaling. Another held my scanned artwork. The last was the private photo folder. My stomach dropped. The folder was protected with a weak encryption password that I had honestly forgotten I even set, just a name and a date, easy to guess if you knew me. Apparently, Maura had. I don't know how she did it. Whether she guessed it, used a tool, or asked someone for help. But she'd accessed it. And then she'd shown it to her friends. I didn't confront her immediately. I needed to think. I made backup copies of everything and removed the hard drive from my setup. I replaced it with an empty one I'd had lying around. I changed every password on my cloud accounts. Then I made one more call. To Evan. Evan is my ex-husband's younger brother. He's a cybersecurity analyst based in Columbus. We'd always been friendly, even after my split from Alan. I told him what happened. He didn't hesitate. Plug her laptop into a secure network if you can. Or send me the logs from the drive, I'll trace it, he said. He found that Maura had plugged my drive into her personal laptop and copied the contents to a folder on her desktop. She'd renamed it vault_dump. Cute. I asked Evan to monitor her activity discreetly. I didn't want revenge, not yet. I wanted to see how far she would go. And she went further. A week later, an old college friend messaged me out of nowhere. "Hey, I think you should know, someone in this group chat shared photos of you. I didn't think it was real at first, but then I saw your face." I asked for screenshots. She sent them. There it was, one of the private photos from the folder. Me, in a soft red bathrobe, sitting on the floor, looking off to the side. Eyes swollen from crying. The caption Maura had written said, "Moody divorce energy LOL." One of her friends replied, "God, how desperate is she?" Another, "Looks like she was trying to seduce the camera and broke into tears halfway." I felt sick. I still didn't confront her directly. Instead, I reached out to someone Maura admired deeply, our cousin Ada. A former runway model turned photography scout based in Pittsburgh. Maura worshipped her, always bragged about her career, begged to be featured in any of her projects. I sent Ada a folder with the screenshots. No context, no demand. Just the truth. She called me the next day. "This is disgusting," Ada said. "I'm done with her." She blocked Maura on every channel. Maura found out the following week when she tried tagging Ada in a promotional post and got an error. Then she burst into my room one night, hysterical. "What did you tell her?" she screamed. I stayed calm. I told her the truth. "You've ruined my connections. You think that's fair?" "I think it's fair that you feel what I felt." She didn't say anything after that. Just turned and slammed the door. 2 days later, Evan called me again. She tried uploading the photos to Google Drive, probably to share them again. I corrupted the upload. Also planted a dummy malware file in her temporary cache. "It'll look like her laptop's infected." She threw out her laptop later that day. I heard her in the kitchen cursing it out. This F***king thing's possessed. I didn't say a word. After the laptop incident, the energy in the house changed completely. Maura stopped speaking to me altogether. No texts, no eye contact. We lived like strangers under the same roof, passing each other in the hallway like ghosts. I started locking my bedroom door, not because I thought she'd do something else, but because the very thought of her being in my space made my skin crawl. She began leaving passive-aggressive notes around the house. "Don't forget to replace the milk you finished, even though I didn't drink it. The office is my space too. Don't take over like you do everything else." She left one on the bathroom mirror one morning, written in eyeliner, "You're not better than me." And honestly, that one got to me. Because for a long time I had never thought I was. If anything, I always felt like Maura had something I didn't. The spotlight. The charm. The ease with people. The part that made everyone in the family bend over backward for her attention. Now, I finally saw her for what she was, insecure, vindictive, and deeply threatened by anything she couldn't control or mock. I started looking for apartments. I couldn't breathe in that house anymore. It was around this time that I visited our mother for a quiet Sunday dinner. She lived in Akron, about 45 minutes away. Francesca was exactly as I remembered her, pristine living room, candles burning even in daylight, table set like company was coming over even though it was just me. She offered me chamomile tea before even saying hello. "How's everything at Maura's?" she asked, sitting at the table like nothing had happened. I stared at her. "You know we're not speaking, right?" She waved her hand like I'd brought up a bad movie review. "Maura's just under a lot of pressure. Work's been slow. She's had to cut back. She leaked private photos of me, Mom." She blinked. "Well, she didn't post them online, did she?" I almost laughed. "Are you serious right now?" She folded her napkin in half. "You're both adults. You can handle your issues without dragging the rest of us into it. I don't want to choose sides." "You already did," I said. "You always have." She looked down like she was wounded, but not surprised. Like I'd just confirmed something she had worked so hard to pretend wasn't true. That was the last time I visited her for months. When I moved out, I didn't even tell Maura in person. I left a note on the kitchen counter, put my key in an envelope, and drove to the new place I found on North Mantua Street. Small, musty smelling from old carpet, but it was mine. I unpacked slowly, methodically. Each box felt like a clean slate. But the psychological bruises lingered. For weeks after moving, I had recurring nightmares, people laughing at me, rooms with no doors, old photographs stuck on projector screens in a theater full of whispering voices. I woke up sweaty and anxious almost every night. That's when I started writing. Not in a blog or social media. Just Word documents. Letters to Maura I never sent. Letters to myself. To my past self. To my future self. In one of those letters, I wrote, "You thought surviving meant hiding. But sometimes surviving means being seen and standing anyway." That line stayed with me. I printed it out and pinned it above my desk. Ada kept in touch. We had a long conversation on the phone one night while I paced my small kitchen. She never respected the boundary between vulnerability and mockery, Ada said. It's all one big stage to her. And everyone else is just background characters. I told her about Evan's help. She laughed, not maliciously, but with a kind of relief. He always had your back, didn't he? Yeah. Still does. Evan called now and then to check in, make sure I was okay, send me the occasional tech tip or warning. Keep your backups offline. Don't trust cloud syncs for sensitive stuff. That kind of thing. He also told me something interesting a few months later. She's trying to scrub her online presence. Deleted her Twitter, switched her IG to private, removed her name from a few event rosters. It's like she's trying to reinvent herself. Do you think it's guilt? I asked. No, he said. I think it's damage control. That sounded more like her. The final fracture with Maura came at our mother's 70th birthday. She threw a small gathering at a fancy restaurant in Little Italy. Not a massive event, but enough to gather the cousins, a few aunts, and old friends. Francesca looked regal, like she was hosting a banquet for royalty. She always had a flair for performance. When Maura walked in, she looked just as polished, green satin dress, flawless makeup, heels that clicked with every step. The tension in the air was thick the moment we made eye contact. We hadn't spoken in almost a year. She came over and hugged me, a stiff, cold gesture that only made it worse. Then she whispered into my ear, "Let's not make tonight weird, okay?" That felt like a threat wrapped in pleasantry. Over dinner, Francesca gave a speech. She called us both up, me and Maura, to stand beside her as she spoke about how proud she was of her girls. I kept my smile tight. Then, unexpectedly, she handed the mic to me. "Vera, say something," she beamed. My hands were shaking as I took it. I could have said something basic. A thank you, a story from childhood, a cliché about motherhood. But the words came out before I could stop them. I just want to say, this family has taught me a lot. About silence. About appearances. About pretending everything's okay, even when it's not. But I've learned that healing doesn't happen in silence. It happens in truth. And I'm finally living mine. I handed the mic back, walked off the little stage, and returned to my seat. There was a pause. A few claps. Some confused glances. Francesca looked like I'd thrown a glass of wine in her face. Maura looked furious. But I felt free. After that night at the restaurant, things went quiet. Not just between me and Maura, because that bridge had already been ashes, but between me and most of the family. Francesca didn't call for weeks. When she finally did, it was to ask if I really thought that was the appropriate time to air dirty laundry. Not to ask how I was feeling. Not to acknowledge what I'd been through. Just disappointment that I'd disturbed the illusion she worked so hard to keep intact. I was just speaking my truth, I told her. She sighed. There's a time and place for that. I wanted that evening to be peaceful. That's always been your priority, hasn't it? Peace. Even when it means pretending. She didn't argue. She just went quiet and eventually hung up after a few awkward attempts to change the subject. For a while, I let the silence stand. I threw myself into my job at the university. We were digitizing a massive collection of personal letters from women in Ohio dating back to the 19th century, diaries, correspondences, family photos, even wartime telegrams. It was oddly comforting, reading the private worlds of women who lived and cried and survived long before me. Their pain felt real. Their loneliness. Their resilience. I found comfort in that archive room. At home, I started decorating. Slowly. Mindfully. I bought second-hand frames and filled them with scanned pages of my own journals, selected photos that reminded me of strength rather than sadness, and quotes from books that had carried me through hard times. One corner of my living room turned into a little gallery of recovery. But even with all this progress, Maura wasn't done haunting the edges of my life. About 3 months after the birthday dinner, I got a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. It was Maura. "Hey. I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from. But I need to talk to you. Please. It's not about the past." "Well, it is, kind of. But not like that. I don't know who else to talk to." I didn't call back. She left another voicemail 2 days later. "Vera, I'm not okay. I lost my job. My laptop crashed, and I never backed anything up. And, this is stupid, but I think I'm being watched online or something. Weird ads keep popping up with my name in them. I know it's probably nothing. But can you call me?" I sent one text, "You need to figure things out without me. I can't help you anymore." She didn't respond. I didn't know then just how badly things had started to spiral for her. It was Ada who filled me in a month later, over coffee in Pittsburgh during a work trip. "Maura tried to start a social media consulting service," she said. She was advertising herself as a brand strategist. But the reviews weren't good. Someone even posted a thread about her copying content from old clients and leaking their engagement reports. I blinked. "Seriously?" Ada nodded. "She denies it, of course. But her name's kind of mud now in a few circles. She's been reaching out to people I know, trying to rebuild her network. It's not working." There was a part of me that wanted to feel satisfied. But I didn't. I felt tired. Like I'd been waiting for a moral arc that never really came. What happened to Maura wasn't some divine karma, it was just the natural consequence of a life built on presentation instead of integrity. People had finally seen through her. And yet, the damage she'd done to me didn't disappear with her unraveling. It still lived in the way I second-guessed whether I could trust anyone with my private thoughts. In the way I hesitated before taking a photo, even of something as harmless as a sunrise or a cup of tea, because somewhere deep inside, I was still afraid someone would twist it into a joke. One evening in early December, I got another message from Maura. This time, it was an email. She must have dug up my professional university address. Subject: "I'm sorry. I mean it this time. Vera, I know I don't deserve a reply. I wouldn't reply if I were you. But I can't sleep at night anymore without saying something. I messed up. I know that's not enough. What I did wasn't just a mistake. It was cruel. I was jealous and petty and angry at how people always seem to respect you more than me. Even when I thought I had a better life. And I didn't just invade your privacy. I humiliated you. I turned your pain into entertainment, and I let other people laugh at you. I'm ashamed. Truly. I've lost friends. Clients. My reputation. But I'm not asking for sympathy. I just wanted you to know that I finally saw it. I see what I did. I see what it cost you. I hope you found peace." Maura, I read it twice. Then I closed the tab. And I didn't respond. It's strange how time moves differently when you're healing. For years, I felt like I was standing still while life spun around me. But once I left that house, it felt like someone pressed play for the first time. The summer after I was legally emancipated, I moved in with Terrence. He flew me out to San Diego and let me stay in the guest room of his brownstone in South Park. I remember stepping off the plane and just breathing in air that wasn't heavy with history. His house smelled like lemon and cedar and had real art on the walls, nothing like the generic department store prints my parents had plastered everywhere. He didn't ask a million questions. He didn't push. He just made space. In August, I enrolled at a small liberal arts college in Santa Cruz. I declared psychology as my major. Everyone asked me why. I told them the truth. I wanted to help kids who were made to feel crazy for surviving what they were never meant to endure. And I didn't tell them this part, but I also wanted to study how people like Sienna become who they are, how cruelty becomes currency in some homes. It took a while, but eventually, I felt like a person. A year passed. I cut all contact with my parents. Sienna tried texting twice, some vague, hope you're doing well messages, probably just to test the waters. I never responded. By then, she'd graduated and gone on to some mid-sized state university on the East Coast. One of those schools where kids peak in high school and coast off the memory. According to Layla, who had since messaged me multiple times and even apologized in a long, thoughtful email, Sienna's social standing took a hit after that party. Turns out, people don't forget the girl who mocked her sister's hospital stay. She lost her spot on the cheer team her senior year. Her college rec letter from the principal was lukewarm at best, Layla said. Several people dropped her completely, not out of moral principle, but because the party scandal made her look bad. I never lifted a finger to make that happen. But karma, as they say, is incredibly efficient when you stop getting in its way. But here's the real satisfying part. The revenge that came not from cruelty, but clarity. About a year and a half into college, I submitted an essay to a regional writing competition for undergraduate students. It was called Cost of Silence. It was a first-person narrative piece, not named, not entirely confessional, but clear to anyone who knew the story. I didn't write it for exposure. I wrote it because I could. It won. It won the whole damn competition. $5,000 prize. A scholarship from the university. And the piece was featured on the front page of a regional publication's New Voices column. I didn't put my family name in it. I didn't need to. But somehow, it got back to them. I found out through a flurry of blocked number calls and voicemails that I never listened to. Then came a certified letter from my mother, which I didn't open, just tossed in the drawer with the ICU bill and my emancipation documents. The part one did hear, from Layla, again, still acting as an accidental informant, was that Sienna freaked out when someone at her college recognized the essay. Apparently, a mutual friend had read the story online, put two and two together, and asked her if it was about her family. She lost it, Layla wrote. Said you were slandering her. But you didn't even name her. Just kind of funny watching her panic when she's been the one doing damage control for years. I laughed. Not out of spite. But because it was the first time she had to live with the reputation she earned. Sienna had always controlled the narrative. This time, I had the pen. I don't keep tabs on them anymore. Not because I forgive them, but because they don't exist in my world now. My life is full in ways I didn't know were possible. I live in a tiny apartment near campus. It has yellow curtains and secondhand furniture that doesn't match and a cat named Olive who curls into my ribs when I sleep. Jules still texts me every month to check in. Terrence came to my university's spring showcase to hear me read a newer piece out loud. He stood in the back of the room, clapping louder than anyone. I volunteer now, part-time, with a youth crisis center that works with kids who are in the system, or aging out of it. I don't tell them everything about me. But I listen. I see them. Because I know what it's like to grow up invisible. And sometimes, late at night, I still think about that moment at Sienna's party. The pause. The silence. The way all that noise stopped when I finally spoke. I think about the power in that. About how quiet doesn't mean weak. It just means you're waiting for the right moment. And when your moment comes, you don't scream. You don't beg. You just speak. And you let the silence that follows be theirs. Not yours.